Chapter 1. The night my brother mocked me in front of a room full of investors, he had no idea that federal agents were already on their way. He called me the sister who plays in the dirt, while I stood there knowing he had moved over $400,000 out of our father's accounts and refinanced our parents' house for nearly $300,000 without fully explaining the risk. My name is Rachel Bennett, and that dinner was supposed to celebrate his billion-dollar merger. Instead, it became the night the FBI walked in, the merger collapsed, and the golden son of our family was forced to face what he had done. The first time my brother made a room full of strangers laugh at me, I was 10 years old and wearing a homemade science fair ribbon. The second time was March of this year, inside a private club overlooking Central Park, and there were nearly 100 people in tailored suits holding crystal glasses of champagne. I stood beside the grand piano while my brother Andrew Callahan raised his glass and smiled like he owned the skyline. "This is my little sister Rachel. She designs outdoor spaces. Basically, she plays in the dirt for a living." The laughter came quickly polite at first, then louder once they realized Andrew was serious. A few of the men from the merger team glanced at my heels, at my hands, at my simple navy dress, as if they expected to see soil under my nails. Someone said landscaping like it was a punchline. Andrew leaned into it. "She loves mud. If you ever need a shrub trimmed, she is your girl." The room enjoyed that. They always do when someone else becomes entertainment. I did not react. I have learned the discipline of stillness. I kept my shoulders relaxed and my chin level. I let the moment pass through me like cold air. Across the room, my mother, Linda Callahan, 71 years old, and still impeccably styled, smiled faintly. Not wide, not proud, just that careful expression she uses when Andrew says something that makes her uncomfortable, but not enough to interrupt him. Her hands remained folded over her clutch. She did not correct him. She never does. Andrew's wife, Brooke, let out a light social laugh, touching his arm as if to soften the edges. It was the kind of laugh meant to reassure investors that everything was charming and under control. I told myself it did not matter. I told myself I was 42 years old, not 10. I told myself I had built something real. Andrew continued speaking about the merger, about strategic alignment, and projected growth for fiscal year 2026. His firm, Hudson Ridge Capital, was in the final review stage of a merger with a larger New York-based private equity group. This dinner was meant to signal confidence. He spoke easily about capital flow and leveraged positions about numbers that floated comfortably above most people's understanding. He had always known how to use numbers as armor. I watched the men nodding around him. I recognized the look in their eyes. Respect, or what passes for it when someone speaks fluently about money. No one asked what I did in Boston or why a federal building in Cambridge had hired my firm back in 2018. No one asked about the waterfront restoration project my company completed last fall. To them, I was the sister who trimmed hedges, and maybe Andrew preferred it that way. When we were kids in Connecticut, my parents used to say Andrew was born with a calculator in his hand. I was the creative one, the outdoorsy one, the impractical one. From 2006 to 2010, I worked 2 jobs while finishing my degree in landscape architecture. I waited tables at night and interned during the day. Andrew went straight into a fully funded MBA program in Chicago. My parents helped him with tuition and rent because he was investing in his future. I was told I was choosing a passion. In 2013, when I started my own design and build firm with a single pickup truck and a rented storage unit, my mother asked when I planned to find something stable. In 2018, when my company secured a federal contract to redesign the grounds of a government complex, Andrew sent me a text that said, "Congrats, proud of you, kiddo." He still called me kiddo at 35. The room applauded as Andrew concluded his remarks. I clapped, too. It cost me nothing. As servers circulated with wine, I noticed something else. Andrew kept glancing at his phone. Not casually, not the way someone checks a notification. He looked at it with sharp, controlled movements, as if he were expecting something specific. Once, when he thought no one was watching, he unlocked it and stared at the screen for a full 5 seconds. His jaw tightened. Then he slipped it back into his pocket and turned his charm back on. 2 of the men from the merger team stood near the windows. I saw one lean toward the other, whispering something while glancing at Andrew. It lasted only a moment, but it was enough. For someone so confident, he looked slightly off balance. I stepped away from the piano and made my way toward the terrace. The air outside was cold and clean. Central Park stretched below us, dark and orderly. I prefer landscapes that breathe. That is where I met him. He was standing near the railing, silver hair neatly combed back, posture relaxed in a way that suggested he had nothing left to prove. He turned toward me as if he had been waiting. "You are not what he described," he said. His voice was calm, measured, not unkind. I smiled faintly. "I get that a lot." He extended his hand. "My name is Thomas Whitaker." The name registered immediately. I had read it in financial articles for years. He had retired recently after decades in investment banking. "You built the Harbor District project in Boston," he continued. "I recognized your firm's work." I blinked. Most people in that room did not know what my firm's work looked like. "Yes, that was ours." "It was impressive," he said. "Disciplined, clean, expensive taste without waste." I laughed softly. "Thank you." He glanced back through the glass doors at Andrew, who was now animatedly explaining something to a group of executives. "Your brother has a talent for presentation," Thomas said, "but presentation is not the same as foundation." There was something in his tone that shifted the air. "What do you mean?" He studied me for a moment, as if deciding how much to say. "The firm he is merging with has been conducting a review since late 2023. There have been irregularities." Irregularities. The word felt clinical. "What kind of irregularities?" He kept his voice low. "The Securities and Exchange Commission has been looking into Hudson Ridge. Nothing public yet. But the review is not random." I felt a slow tightening in my chest. "You are saying he is under investigation. I am saying the merger is still under review. It is not finalized. And your brother has more at stake tonight than he is letting on." Inside, Andrew laughed at something one of the partners said. He raised his glass again. "He does not look worried," I said. Thomas gave a slight nod. "He is checking his phone every 3 minutes. So you noticed that too." He did not answer immediately. Then he said something else that stayed with me. "Confidence can be a mask. Desperation often hides beneath it." A waiter stepped outside, interrupting us briefly. I glanced back toward the ballroom. Andrew caught my eye for a split second. His smile faltered before he replaced it with something rehearsed. I turned back to Thomas. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because he said I have seen men build careers on perception, and I have seen what happens when the numbers do not match the narrative." His gaze did not waver. "You should pay attention, Rachel. There is something larger unfolding here." The wind picked up slightly, lifting a strand of my hair. Inside, the music swelled as someone began another toast. I had come prepared to endure humiliation. I had not come prepared to question the foundation of my brother's success. For the first time that evening, the laughter no longer felt like the main event. It felt like a distraction. Chapter 2. When I stepped back inside the ballroom, the applause had shifted to easy laughter again, as if nothing serious could possibly exist beneath polished wood and crystal glass. Andrew was mid-sentence talking about projected growth for the next 2 fiscal years, his tone steady and reassuring. If there were red flags in his world, he was burying them under confidence. I did not approach him. I did not confront him there. Instead, I found Thomas Whitaker again near the bar. "You said irregularities," I told him quietly. "How serious are we talking?" "Serious enough that the review did not start last month," he said. "Late 2023. Some inconsistencies in reported returns from 2020 through 2023. Nothing publicly charged yet, but enough that a merger is convenient. Convenient how? A merger can reset perception. It can dilute scrutiny. It can buy time. I let that settle. Andrew was not careless. He was ambitious, yes, competitive, absolutely, but reckless. Have you seen numbers? I asked. I have seen patterns, Thomas replied. Patterns rarely lie. He studied me again as if weighing how far I would take this. Who handles your father's finances? The question hit harder than the others. My brother does, I said slowly. He has power of attorney. Since 2022. Thomas did not look surprised. You may want to look closely at that. I drove back to Connecticut the next morning. Greenwich still looked exactly the same as it had when I was a teenager. Manicured lawns and brick colonials lined up like proof of generational stability. My parents' house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, the maple trees in the yard just beginning to bud. My father, Robert Callahan, 75 years old, opened the door with a smile that felt softer than I remembered. Rachel, you came early. I kissed his cheek. You sound surprised. He chuckled faintly. I forget things sometimes. Days blur. We sat at the kitchen table where I had done homework 15 years ago. My mother, Linda, was arranging flowers near the sink. Andrew said the dinner went well, she said without turning around. It was impressive, I answered carefully. My father poured coffee into 3 mugs, spilling a little on the counter. You know Andrew always lands on his feet, my mother said. He is good with numbers. I looked at my father. Dad, can we talk about your accounts for a minute? He frowned slightly. Accounts? Your retirement funds. The house? Linda turned around sharply. Why are you bringing that up? Because I want to understand. My father rubbed his temple. Andrew handles most of that now. It is easier. Things get complicated. When did that start? 2 years ago, Linda answered for him. He was forgetting passwords, misplacing statements. It made sense for Andrew to step in. Power of attorney? I asked. Yes, she said. It was just practical. Dad, do you remember signing the paperwork? He paused. There was a small, unsettling silence. I remember Andrew explaining it. I think we signed something at the attorney's office. Or maybe here. It was in 2022, my mother said firmly. Everything was done properly. I opened the folder I had printed from county records. Public filings are rarely glamorous, but they are precise. There was a home equity loan filed in May of 2024, $285,000 against this house. My father blinked. We refinanced, Linda said quickly. Andrew said rates were favorable. Dad, do you remember signing for that? He stared at the table. I remember signing something. Andrew said it would improve returns. Improve returns on what? On everything, he murmured almost to himself. Linda crossed her arms. Rachel, what is this really about? I looked at her directly. Why was the house refinanced for that amount? She hesitated. Andrew said it was strategic. Leveraging assets. For what purpose? Investment flexibility, she replied. You know how finance works? I do know how finance works, I said evenly. I just do not know why my 75-year-old father needed leverage. My mother's jaw tightened. Andrew understands these things. He explained that moving money around could generate better growth. Dad, I said gently, do you know where that $285,000 went? He shook his head slowly. Andrew handles it. The words settled in the room like dust. Power of attorney is legal if the person signing has capacity. My father was not incapacitated in 2022. He was forgetful, yes. Slower with numbers, yes. But legally capable. Refinancing is legal. Leveraging a house is legal. None of it on its face was criminal. But legality and ethics are not twins. Linda's voice sharpened. You sound like you are accusing your brother of something. I am asking questions. You are jealous, she said. You have always been jealous of his success. The old script. I built my company from scratch, I said quietly. I am not jealous of anyone. Then why are you digging into this? Because he asked me for $75,000 last night. The words slipped out before I planned them. Linda blinked. Asked you. He said he needed a bridge. Something about liquidity before the merger. That makes sense, she said too quickly. Big deals require temporary adjustments. Dad looked confused. Andrew asked you for money. Yes. Why would he need your money? He asked, genuinely puzzled. I did not answer. Later that afternoon, I sat in my old bedroom scrolling through online banking records my father had given me access to years ago before Andrew took control. Some of the old statements were still archived. I compared dates, amounts, transfers. Patterns emerged. Not proof, not yet, but patterns. Transfers from my father's retirement account in late 2022, smaller amounts at first, then larger ones through 2023 and the refinance in 2024. I called Andrew. He picked up on the second ring. What is going on, Rachel? I am at Mom and Dad's house. You should have told me. Why? Because I manage their finances now. It is complicated. Then explain it to me. There was a pause. The refinance, I said. Why was the house leveraged? He exhaled sharply. It was strategic. Dad's portfolio was underperforming. We shifted capital into higher yield positions. And the $75,000 you need. Temporary liquidity. That is all. Your firm is merging with a multi-billion-dollar fund and you need $75,000 from your sister. He laughed lightly, but it sounded forced. You would not understand how capital cycles work. Try me. It is short-term timing. The merger is in final review. Once it closes, everything normalizes. It is not finalized yet, I said. Another pause. Who told you that? I have ears. Rachel, he said, his tone changing. Do not insert yourself into things you do not understand. Then help me understand. You are overreacting. I looked around my childhood bedroom at the trophies Andrew had once stacked on his shelf and the watercolor paintings I had taped to mine. Dad does not remember signing the refinance papers. He is 75. Of course, he does not remember every detail. Did he understand them? Yes. Did Mom? Silence. You are reading too much into this, he said finally. You always do. The line went dead. I sat there for a long time after that. Legally, nothing I had seen yet was a crime. Power of attorney was in place. Refinancing was documented. Transfers were not automatically theft. But something did not sit right. My father trusted Andrew completely. My mother trusted Andrew more than she trusted me. They both believed he spoke the language of money fluently and therefore honestly. And Andrew, for the first time in his life, sounded unsure. I did not confront him again that week. Instead, I began to collect documents quietly. County records, archived statements, dates, amounts. If there was nothing wrong, the numbers would clear him. If there was something wrong, I would find it. Not as a jealous sister, as someone who understood that trust can be exploited long before anyone calls it fraud. By the time I drove back to Boston that Sunday evening, I had made a decision. I would not accuse. I would not assume. I would verify everything legally and carefully before I took another step. Chapter 3. The following Monday, I called a lawyer whose name I had written down 3 times before I finally worked up the nerve to dial. Her name was Stephanie Kim, 46 years old, based in Stamford, specializing in elder law and corporate risk. I had been referred to her by a colleague who once navigated a guardianship case. Her assistant put me through within the hour. This is Stephanie. My name is Rachel Bennett. I need advice about power of attorney and possible financial exploitation." There was no dramatic pause on her end, just professional calm. "Tell me what you know, and tell me only what you can document." That was the first thing I liked about her. I explained the timeline. Power of attorney granted in 2022. Refinance in 2024 for $285,000. Transfers from my father's retirement account. A brother who managed everything. A father who did not remember signing key documents. Stephanie listened without interruption. "Let me be very clear," she said finally. "If you accuse your brother of elder financial exploitation without solid evidence, you will fracture your family permanently. There is no undoing that." "I understand." "If you are correct and funds were misappropriated under power of attorney, that is not a misunderstanding. That is a crime in Connecticut." The word hung there. Crime. "How do I find out without making this a public war?" I asked. "You gather documentation, quietly. You do not confront. You do not threaten. You verify. And if there is enough, you involve authorities in a controlled way." Controlled. The word sounded colder than I expected. Stephanie recommended a financial investigator. His name was Anthony Ruiz, 53, former forensic accountant, who now ran private investigations in White Plains. I met him in a small office above a bakery that smelled like sugar and coffee. He wore a navy blazer and wire-frame glasses, and he did not waste time. "Walk me through every dollar you are concerned about," he said, opening a legal pad. I handed him copies of statement dates highlighted in yellow. "I am not saying he stole anything," I said. "I just need clarity." Anthony nodded. "Clarity is my job." For 3 weeks, he traced transfers across accounts. He requested archived statements. He pulled transaction histories from institutions my father barely remembered opening. When he called me back his expression was careful. "There were transfers totaling $412,000 between late 2022 and fall 2024, he said. My throat tightened. "From your father's retirement accounts into accounts controlled by your brother." "Controlled how?" "Primary signatory, direct transfer authorizations under power of attorney. Purpose listed: investment repositioning, short-term liquidity, portfolio optimization. All vague, all plausible on paper." Anthony slid another document toward me. "Your father's longtime wealth advisor was removed from the account in mid-2022. Removed. Your brother sent a written request to the firm, effective immediately." I remembered the name, Daniel Porter. He had come to our house every spring with leather folders and soft reassurances. I called him that afternoon. "This is Rachel Bennett," I said when he answered. "My father's daughter." There was a pause, then recognition. "Rachel, I was surprised when Andrew terminated our advisory relationship." "When was that?" "June 2022. He said he was consolidating oversight. I disagreed with some aggressive moves he proposed." "What kind of moves?" "Increasing leverage, shifting capital into higher-yield private placements. Risk was elevated." And my father. He trusted Andrew. I thanked him and ended the call with a hollow feeling in my chest. Back at Stephanie's office, we reviewed the refinance documents. I placed the original signature from 2021 beside the refinance signature from 2024. "They are not identical," I said. "They do not need to be identical," she replied calmly. "People's signatures change over time." "But the angle, the pressure." "It is enough to call it a suspicious pattern, not enough to allege forgery without forensic analysis." I nodded. I was not looking for shortcuts. I was looking for truth. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. Andrew called me one evening while I was still at the office in Boston. "What exactly are you doing?" he asked without greeting. Excuse me. I heard you have been asking Dad for statements. I asked him about the refinance. You are creating confusion where none exists. Then clarify it. Silence. Then a short laugh. Rachel, numbers can be misinterpreted. You work with soil and stone. Finance is different. $412,000 moved out of Dad's retirement accounts, I said. Explain it. Portfolio strategy, temporary reallocation, market timing, and removing Daniel Porter. He was conservative. We needed flexibility. You needed liquidity, I said. Another pause. You are not equipped to understand the timing pressures of a merger, he replied. So there are pressures. There are always pressures. Did Dad understand the refinance? Of course he did. He does not remember signing it. He is 75. He does not remember what he had for breakfast. Did you explain the risk? His voice sharpened. You are overstepping. I am protecting him. You are jealous. The word again, like a reflex. Jealous of what? I asked quietly. The investigation your firm is under. Silence on the line. Who told you that? I read. You are out of your depth. The call ended abruptly. The next morning, I received an email from Olivia Trent, the developer overseeing a waterfront mixed-use project in Cambridge. It was worth $3.2 million to my firm. We need to discuss something sensitive, she wrote. We met at her office overlooking the Charles River. I heard your last name mentioned in connection with Hudson Ridge, she said carefully. Is there exposure risk for us? My company is entirely independent, I said. Different ownership, different accounts, different legal structure. I believe you, she said. But investors ask questions. I can provide full financial transparency. She studied me for a long moment. I value your work, Rachel. Just make sure whatever is happening stays contained. Contained. As if truth were something you could zip into a folder. That evening, Stephanie called. There is something else, she said. I made an inquiry through a colleague in federal enforcement. Hudson Ridge has been on the radar of the Financial Crimes Unit since late 2023. I sat down slowly. For what? Possible securities fraud, reporting inconsistencies, it is preliminary. And elder exploitation. That would fall under Connecticut jurisdiction, but if there is overlap, coordination is possible. A day later, I met Special Agent Marcus Hale at a federal building in Hartford. He was 39, steady-eyed, deliberate. I cannot discuss active investigations in detail, he said, but I can tell you this. If your documentation shows misuse of funds under power of attorney, that is separate and serious. What happens then? We build a case quietly. We avoid tipping anyone off until we are ready. And the merger. If we intervene, timing matters. Timing, again. I drove back to Boston that night with a stack of copies in my passenger seat and the weight of something irreversible settling in. I had started with suspicion. Now I had numbers, transfers, removed advisors, leverage against a house my father built with his own hands. Nothing had been proven beyond doubt, but enough had been uncovered that doing nothing was no longer neutral. I stood in my office long after my staff had gone home looking at the city lights through the window. This was no longer about humiliation at a dinner. It was about control, about trust, about a man who believed he could move money through family as easily as he moved it through markets. And if there was going to be accountability, it would not come from anger. It would come from preparation. When I called Agent Hale the next morning, my voice did not shake. I am ready to move forward, I told him. There was a brief pause on his end, as if he understood exactly what that meant. Then we proceed carefully, he said. I knew there would be no easy way back after that. Chapter 4. The night of the merger dinner arrived with the kind of cold clarity that makes the city look sharpened at the edges. The private club in Manhattan was warmer than I remembered, filled with amber light and low music that softened every conversation into something almost intimate. Waiters moved like choreography between tables. Crystal glasses caught the light. Everything looked expensive and controlled. Andrew looked like himself again. He stood near the head of the long dining table navy suit, perfectly tailored, confidence restored. If he felt pressure, he had buried it well. His voice carried easily across the room as he greeted partners from Blackwell Equity and their advisors. My mother Linda sat 2 seats down from him, posture-straight pride visible in the way she watched her son command attention. My father sat beside her, quiet, smiling vaguely at each introduction. I took my seat halfway down the table. I had invited Thomas Whitaker at Andrew's request, under the guise of expanding investor presence. Andrew believed Thomas's attendance signaled confidence. He had no idea what Thomas had already shared with me. Andrew lifted his glass. "Tonight is about alignment," he began. "2 firms, 1 vision. We combine disciplined capital management with forward-looking strategy. Growth that is smart, not flashy." Laughter and nods. "And for those of you who met my sister at the last dinner," he added, lightly glancing toward me, "she will confirm that while she works with mud, I prefer money." A ripple of amusement moved down the table. "She designs beautiful gardens," he continued. "I design portfolios." More laughter. I felt eyes turn toward me again, waiting for a reaction. I gave them none. Thomas leaned slightly in my direction and murmured, "He is doubling down." Andrew continued, with projections for 2026, referencing performance metrics from 2020 through 2023. I watched 2 men from Blackwell exchange a look when he mentioned last year's returns. The first shift in the room was subtle. Thomas cleared his throat gently and raised his hand just enough to signal interruption. "Andrew," he said evenly, "before we toast the projected future, perhaps we should address the recent internal review findings." Andrew's smile did not disappear, but it tightened. "What findings are you referring to?" "The forensic review your team authorized during due diligence," Thomas replied calmly. "Specifically, the discrepancies in reported returns between 2020 and 2023. The air changed. One of the Blackwell partners, a woman named Karen Morales, opened a slim folder in front of her. "We did notice inconsistencies in fee allocation and valuation timing," she said. "We assumed your compliance team had clarified them." Andrew let out a small laugh. "Timing differences, nothing structural." Karen met his eyes. "The numbers do not align quarter to quarter." Murmurs began at the far end of the table. Andrew reached for his water glass. His hand was steady. "Those are technical adjustments," he said. "Completely within regulatory parameters." Thomas did not raise his voice. "Regulatory parameters are precisely what the Securities and Exchange Commission is reviewing." Silence. Andrew's phone vibrated on the table. He glanced at it, then at the screen again as it continued to buzz. His expression shifted for a fraction of a second before he masked it. "Excuse me," he said, picking up the phone. He stepped away from the table but did not leave the room. I watched his face drain of color as he read the message. When he returned, his confidence had thinned. "There appears to be some confusion at my parents' house," he said, attempting composure. "Routine inquiry." Karen closed her folder slowly. "We were just informed by counsel that a federal warrant was executed at the Greenwich property tied to Hudson Ridge," she said. The words did not need to be loud to be devastating. My mother looked from Andrew to Karen, confusion forming. "What does that mean?" she asked. Andrew opened his mouth to respond, but he did not get the chance. 2 men in dark suits entered the room quietly, followed by a woman in a navy blazer carrying a leather folder. Conversations died mid-sentence. The taller of the two men stepped forward. "Andrew Callahan," he said evenly. "I am Special Agent Marcus Hale with the Federal Bureau of Investigation." The room went completely still. "We have a warrant related to an ongoing investigation into securities fraud involving Hudson Ridge Capital." My father blinked slowly. My mother's hand flew to her chest. Andrew attempted a smile. "This must be some misunderstanding." Agent Hale's tone did not change. "In addition, representatives from the Connecticut State Attorney's Office are present regarding potential elder financial exploitation." A second official stepped forward, identifying herself as Assistant District Attorney Elena Rivera. "The investigation concerns transfers totaling $412,000 from accounts belonging to Robert Callahan between 2022 and 2024, she said clearly. My father's head turned toward Andrew. "Andrew," he whispered. The room seemed to shrink. I stood up. No one told me to. I simply did. "Those transfers were executed under power of attorney granted in 2022, I said calmly. "They were followed by a refinance on my parents' home in 2024 for $285,000. Every face in the room was on me now. "The long-term wealth advisor was removed from the account that same year," I continued, "and the funds were redirected into accounts controlled solely by Andrew." Andrew's eyes burned into me. "You have no idea what you are talking about," he said sharply. "I have statements," I replied. "I have dates. And I have confirmation that the Securities and Exchange Commission has been reviewing Hudson Ridge since late 2023. Karen Morales stood slowly. "We are suspending merger proceedings effective immediately pending full investigation," she said. Brooke rose abruptly from her chair, whispering to Andrew. "What is happening?" she demanded. He did not answer. My mother's voice shook. "I signed those refinance papers," she said suddenly. "Andrew told me it was strategic." The words landed heavier than anything else that night. Agent Hale stepped closer. "Mr. Callahan, we need you to come with us to discuss these matters further." Andrew looked around the table, searching for someone to anchor him. Investors avoided his gaze. Brooke stepped back from him as if distance could erase association. "You are destroying everything," he hissed at me under his breath. I met his eyes. "No," I said quietly. "You did that." He opened his mouth again, but Agent Hale placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "This way, sir." My father remained seated, staring at the polished wood in front of him. My mother looked smaller than I had ever seen her. As Andrew was escorted toward the exit, the room remained silent, the earlier laughter replaced by something closer to disbelief. The golden sun, the man who had always spoken in fluent numbers and perfect projections, was now walking past the same investors who had applauded him minutes earlier. The mask had not slipped. It had shattered. The door closed behind him with a soft final click. No one spoke for several long seconds. The merger dinner was over. Chapter 5. It did not feel like victory when the room emptied. It felt like oxygen returning after someone had held my head underwater for too long. My mother walked out first, gripping her purse so tightly her knuckles turned white. My father followed with slow, uncertain steps, as if the ground itself had become unfamiliar. Brooke did not look at any of us. She spoke rapidly into her phone as she left, already moving into damage control. Thomas Whitaker stayed behind just long enough to place a hand lightly on my shoulder. "You did what you had to do," he said. I did not trust my voice, so I only nodded. Outside Manhattan was loud and indifferent. Yellow taxis pushed through the night. People hurried past the club without knowing what had just collapsed inside. On the drive back to Connecticut, my father stared out the passenger window. "Andrew is not a bad man," he said softly. I kept my eyes on the road. He made choices, I replied, and he made them with your money. My father did not answer. He only pressed his palm against the glass as if he could steady himself. The first consequence came quickly. By the next morning, Blackwell Equity issued a formal notice suspending the merger. Andrew's firm, Hudson Ridge Capital, released a brief statement about cooperating with regulators. News traveled fast in financial circles, even when names were not yet printed in headlines. Within 48 hours, Brooke filed for divorce. My mother told me this over the phone, as if she were reporting the weather voice, flat stunned. She said she cannot be associated with this. She said her reputation is her livelihood. I could picture Brooke in her spotless apartment, already rehearsing a narrative where she was blindsided, where she was a victim of Andrew's secrecy. It was not my problem. Not anymore. Stephanie Kim called me 3 days after the dinner. Federal authorities have requested a freeze on certain accounts connected to Hudson Ridge, she said. Asset preservation is standard when there is an active securities investigation. So he cannot move money around, I said. Not without consequences. There was relief in that, but it was a cold kind. Then came the Connecticut side. Assistant District Attorney Elena Rivera contacted Stephanie and requested my documentation. The language was careful and formal. Potential elder financial exploitation, fiduciary duty under power of attorney, misappropriation of funds. The case was no longer a family argument. It was a file on a desk. My father kept asking where Andrew was. He is talking to lawyers, my mother said each time. My father nodded, as if that explained everything. A week later, I sat at the kitchen table in my parents' house with Stephanie, my mother, and my father. Paperwork spread out like a map of everything we should have been paying attention to. Stephanie spoke gently, but she did not soften the truth. Your current power of attorney arrangement cannot continue as is, she said. We need protections. A trust can shield assets. Guardianship may be appropriate depending on Robert's cognitive status. My mother flinched at the word guardianship. He is not a child, she said. No, Stephanie replied. He is a person who deserves to be protected from financial harm. My father looked down at his hands. I did not want to be a burden, he said. You are not, I told him, and this time my voice held. The refinance was the next problem. $285,000 against the house, a lien that would keep growing if we did nothing. My mother stared at the payoff statement like it was written in another language. Andrew said it was temporary, she whispered. Stephanie met my gaze. You can contest certain aspects, but it will take time. Interest accrues. The simplest way to stabilize this quickly is to pay it off. I knew what she was asking without asking. I had the funds, not because I was secretly wealthy in some dramatic way, but because I had built my company carefully year by year, and I had kept reserves. I had always planned for risk. I just never thought the risk would be my own family. I wrote the check. $285,000. The bank accepted it like any other transaction. There were no trumpets, no justice served with flair, just a quiet confirmation email that the lien was satisfied. When I told my father, he stared at me, eyes wet. You should not have to do that, he said. I should not have to. I agreed, but I can, and I would rather protect you than argue about what should have happened. That night, my mother knocked on my old bedroom door. She stood there hesitant, as if she had forgotten how to speak to me without filtering everything through Andrew. I did not know, she said. I did not respond immediately. You signed the refinance papers, I said. She swallowed. He told me it was paperwork. He said the numbers would work. He said we would be foolish not to leverage the house. And you believed him? I believed him because he talked like he knew everything, she whispered. He spoke in numbers. He sounded confident. And I wanted to believe my son was everything I told everyone he was. The admission was not an apology. It was something smaller and more honest. My mother looked at me as if she expected me to comfort her. I did not. "I am not punishing you," I said quietly. "But I am not pretending this did not happen either." She nodded slowly, tears gathering but not falling. "I was hard on you," she said. "Yes," I replied. She flinched at the simple truth. Then she stepped back into the hallway, leaving the door half open, as if unsure whether she still had a place in my world. The next morning, my father had a moment of clarity that broke me more than any courtroom language ever could. He found me making coffee, moving carefully like he did not want to startle the day. "Rachel," he said. "Yes, Dad." "I remember when you were 19, he continued. "You came home exhausted from work and you still stayed up late drawing those garden plans. You told me you were paying for school yourself." I froze. "I should have been prouder," he said, voice trembling. "I should have seen what Andrew was becoming. I should have protected you both." I turned away so he would not see my eyes fill. "You did the best you could," I said. He shook his head. "I trusted him because I wanted it to be simple. Because I did not want to admit I was getting older. I wanted someone else to hold the numbers so I did not have to." He stepped closer and touched my shoulder. "I believe you," he said. "I believe you did this for me, not to hurt him." The words mattered more than he would ever understand. By early summer, the legal process moved the way legal processes move, slowly, methodically, without emotion. The federal investigation continued. Stephanie kept me informed when she could. The state case proceeded with its own timeline. I provided statements. I provided documentation. I showed up when asked. Andrew did not contact me again. When my mother mentioned that his accounts were frozen, that his access to money had been cut off, she said it like a tragedy. I heard it as consequence. In August, I stood on the edge of a riverfront construction site in Boston, hard hat-on boots dusted with dirt. The project was worth $5.6 million, the largest municipal contract my company had ever held. My foreman called out measurements. My crew moved with confidence. This was my world. It had always been my world. Not ballrooms and projections, not laughter at someone else's expense. Real work, real outcomes. My phone buzzed. A commercial developer was confirming a new deal, $4 million pending final permits. I looked out at the water at the way the sunlight turned the surface silver. There was no celebration swelling in my chest, no triumphant speech, just quiet. People sometimes imagine revenge as fireworks. They imagine you walk away laughing hair perfect while the villain collapses behind you. It did not feel like that. It felt like finally putting down a weight I had been carrying for years. It felt like boundaries drawn with steady hands. It felt like choosing my father's safety over my brother's image. And it felt like understanding in a way I never had before that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop letting someone else define your worth. If you have ever been in a position where your family expected loyalty at the expense of your own conscience, I want to know what you would do. Would you stay quiet to keep the peace, or would you choose the hard truth and live with the fallout? Leave your thoughts, and if you want more stories like this, stay here.